if someone's struggling with suicidality, it's really easy to want to like push them towards life. And of course you want them to stay, but you have to come alongside them first, really, and kind of hear why they want to take their own life, get some of that out, and really deal with what's going on.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors and ideators so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough, and when we do talk about it, when we engage with people in pain, most of us are not very good at it. Most of us are actually really bad at it. Sorry if that offends you, but it's simply the truth. One of my goals here on this podcast is to have more conversations and hopefully better conversations with survivors, in large part to help more people in more places hopefully feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are an attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, I'd love to talk with you. Please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. I promise I will get back to you rather quickly. A quick shout out to Matt. Thanks, Matt. He gave a financial contribution helping the cause. It's tax deductible, y'all. We got a new fiscal sponsor, so that link will look a little different, but I've replaced it just about everywhere, so that shouldn't be an issue. Let me know if it is. We could use the help. And again, if there's anything you cannot find on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen, or our website, just shoot me an email, a message. I'm happy to get back to you. Start a conversation, give you the information you need or whatever it else may be. Finally, we are talking about suicide here on this podcast. My guests and I do not hold back. So please take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen because there is so much to learn. Today I am talking with Elizabeth. Elizabeth lives in the Eastern United States of America, and she is a suicide attempt-ish survivor. Hey, Elizabeth. Well, thanks for wanting to talk with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for all you do for doing this. That's a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You are a suicide attempt survivor?
So it actually depends on how you define it.
That's your job.
Yeah, because I've taken steps towards suicide. I've never actually physically harmed myself, but I've taken steps towards it. And one time I was taking steps, I was taking a step towards it, and my foot slipped. And that's what stopped me.
Wait, when you say a step, you meant a literal step?
Yes, physical. Okay. Yeah.
We can imagine what the method was.
Yeah, method was one of them that I'd rather not go into.
No problem. But I have a question about that, which also may be something you don't want to talk about, because it's a big thing in suicide, world of suicide, of not talking about method. And I have some strong feelings about that probably don't really matter. Why, for you, is it important, at least in this context, to not talk about it?
I've told multiple people about this, and I think some of them are kind of still getting their feet wet into this kind of stuff. My gut's telling me that it's not quite. I do talk about method other places, so sometimes if it's like not as public. So the more public it is, the more I kind of am a little more careful with what I say.
Sure.
But other places, sometimes I have, and very openly. I've written some stuff that I shared with very few people. And I've written one thing that I wanted to share here too.
Definitely. Before we do that, you've heard the podcast?
Yeah, I've heard. I listened to 3 episodes.
It's so weird that I've never actually come up with the best way to frame this question. But so the most direct way of asking it is like, why do you want to talk with me about this and have other humans hear it?
I just think it's so important. I think this is something that it's a very common thing living with suicidality. I think we just, like you said, we just don't tend to talk about it. The last time I took steps towards suicide in 2020, one thing that really helped me, I read about an attempt survivor who had gone on to live a purposeful life and help other people. And I was like, well, you can actually get through this. And so that was a big thing for me. And so I'm hoping maybe I can do that some for other people as well.
So that was 2020?
Yes. 2020 was the last time. Yeah.
So does that mean that you're living a meaningful and purposeful life now?
Yeah, I would say I am. There are definitely times when I have strong suicidal feelings, times that I really want to do it, and it's better than it was before. There are a couple times, like the spring of 2021.
Mhm,
So when I came close in 2020,
mhm.
I had no idea I was going to come close again. I didn't. I had started sharing some of my story about my past coming close to suicide, which was years before that. And I started sharing my story some with some of my friends from church. And then I came close again. And it was so hard to deal with. I
The
just
fact
felt broken. Like, how
that
did this happen? How did this happen again? I don't
you
know.
just
So in college, which was years ago, that
okay,
was actually when my foot slipped. That's when I kept seeking out the means for suicide.
okay,
And then I stayed away from taking steps towards suicide for about 18 years.
okay.
And then 2020, I did. And that's when I was just like, how did I come close to this again? I thought I was done. It was just like, what? And
So for, like, close to 2 decades, you're living, ideating, or is it kind of not really a part of your life?
some of the time, I had times when I was, definitely some times when I wasn't too.
Mhm.
But I had been for I went through a trauma in 2014, was diagnosed with PTSD, which I kinda think, like, about PTSD, it's like, it can look different in women too, I think, than in men, and sometimes that's not recognized, and so that was hard for me. But also in another way, it's like, well, hey, my body's just responding this way,
Yeah.
so why is it called a disorder? Because okay.
Well, we can have a conversation about all kinds of disorders if with that framing, right?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
why are a lot of things called disorders, like, when we're actually just surviving, and it's actually a tool to survive?
Yeah. So I feel that way. Sometimes I'll just use the words like trauma response instead of PTSD. It just feels more human. After that, I had suicidal feelings for a bit and then they went away. And then I realized more was going on. I started kind of working on it, but I don't think it was working what I was doing. And then it started coming back. And then COVID hit and then things got worse. Like COVID was definitely related to it. It was
Right.
just yeah, yeah, definitely.
I have a question. Do you remember, were you a little girl or teenager thinking about this stuff sometimes?
I remember thinking about it once before college, but college is when it really hit,
Okay.
just hard, like a sledgehammer, just wham, and then suddenly it's like, "Whoa, I just can't, like, I don't know how to deal I didn't know how to deal with this anymore." It was just
Who does know how to deal with it?
yeah, yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
what happened and why things got like that in college?
I think it was multiple factors, actually. I tend to struggle with perfectionism. And so I wanted to do things really well. I want to get good grades. I like people around me to be happy. And if
Mm,
they're not, then sometimes I blame myself for that, even if it's like, taking responsibility for other people's emotions. It's not a
right.
helpful thing to do. So, yeah, I think that was part of it. Definitely a big part of it.
But the way you were talking about trauma and response and how it's different with men and women, but it's everybody's experience with suicide is like there's common threads and patterns, but it's so unique.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
years of conversations, but they all to me seem new. So like I'm like always curious, like what is it like? So you're this 18, 19, 20-year old. That's a time when some people are struggling pretty hard too. Sometimes mental health issues kick in, but all but are you like kind of aware of what's going on? Or are you just slipping and just like not really aware of it, but like all of a sudden you're failing or relationship problems? Like what's the level of awareness, I guess is the question.
I think a relatively low level until then I started feeling strong suicidality. And then when I started feeling that, then it was like, okay, I need to get help. And
Mhm.
I went to the health center, then went on vacation, started seeing a counselor.
So all
I
the
had,
things you're supposed to do,
yes,
like
yeah,
you're checking the boxes. I'm trying, I'm trying, I'm trying.
yes.
And then what happens?
I had two times in college of strong suicidality. And the first time, some people were really trying to support me pretty hard, really working hard to do that. I think kind of pushing some of their own boundaries to do that, to be honest, that was a tricky thing. And then the second time through, I also had some close friends, although I had close friends the first time, but especially, like, the second time, maybe because I'd gone through it before, I think I had more of a memory of how to navigate it probably, because that's a big part of it for me. So the second time, I had 2 friends, I'm still friends with them, and they were just really there for me and, helped to support me and everything. That was really helpful, and I don't think I actually took steps towards it that time.
I'm
Yeah.
not quite entirely clear on what you mean when you say that.
To start seeking out the means for it.
Planning.
Yeah.
Uh,
Planning and, like, taking steps towards seeking out the means and using them.
some other things that come up a lot on this podcast that I think people who haven't dealt with this don't think about much, which makes sense. Like you think about how you want your room to look when you're gone, or what papers need to be signed before you're gone, or like that's
Yep.
moving in my mind. Like that's taking steps, and not everybody does that. But like I would say, from the conversations I've had, the majority probably think about that stuff.
Yeah. I think I did some, not really in terms of, like, my grades or getting work done. I had done it, I mean, I wouldn't have graduated, so I kind of wouldn't have.
Would
But,
not have graduated if you had ended your life. I agree with that statement. Yes.
yes, yes.
Well, we don't know if you would have that your attempt would have worked.
Yeah, that's also true. I don't know. The way I think about it too is really when I'm feeling like I want to attempt, I really try to be careful in terms of, like, when I'm around, because that is very important. Trying to, like, not start the process for me,
Yeah.
like, keeping away, because once I start, it'd be really hard to stop. I have, like, taken steps towards making my environment safer since 2020 with the encouragement of a friend, I will say is
That's the difference maker sometimes.
yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I ask always, like, who do you have anyone to talk to? Like, a lot of people really don't. And they would say, I could talk to this person, and I'll say, "But do you?" And they say, "No." And I get it, and or at least from what I've learned, it's like, I get the reasons why. What's your experience been like? I mean, I know we're covering a chunk of time talking about your entire life, but what has your experience been like in talking with people about it from a personal, like, "I'm having these thoughts."
Well, people have always treated me with compassion and with kindness. My church friends have definitely. I think people can be there like in different ways too. And that's one thing that the thing I wrote refers to. Because some of my friends, I think it's really like some people are okay with someone coming to them when they're going through tough suicidal intensity, and some people aren't. And both of those are okay. And you have to evaluate, your own capacity and stuff and have boundaries is a healthy thing. I really believe that, like, there are people I can come to if
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of having strong suicidal intensity. I don't want to make it look like that's the only way to support me, though, because other people really do in other ways, like just with acts of kindness. I sent something related to an event I was going to my sister. I haven't really talked to her much about it, but what she did is she did, like, a bunch of things for my birthday, like, multiple things for my birthday right around then, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay, message received." I knew
Mhm.
she wanted me to stay. I know she's concerned and she wanted me to stay. That's a message, you know? The people from my church who have prayed with me and stuff like that and prayed for me, and I'm kind of empathic. I can sense sometimes I can sense, I think, when someone's praying for me, and that's really, really cool.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever heard anybody say that.
Yeah, I think I can sense it. And that's a tricky thing too. Like, I know one of the questions you sent me, I hope it's okay if I kind of
Of course.
uh if I were to write a memoir, I think it might be Reflections of a Suicidal Empath because
Oh my god, you just literally went to the memoir? You went to the memoir question right away? Okay, I
I
love.
did. Yes.
Alright. Usually it's my job to decide, but I'll give you a little latitude, so I love it again. Can you
Well, that's why I asked.
say it again?
Reflections of a Suicidal Empath.
Yeah, that's got some it's unique. It is, ooh, I wanna understand more about that. What one of the what we were talking about that sort of you transitioned from was being able to know when people are praying for you.
Yeah. And that's part of, I think, like the gift God's given me of being able to sense emotions and stuff that somehow I can tell. And that's really helpful. Just that knowing.
I guess. I mean, it could be. hard too, though, I would think.
Yes, yes. Being an empath is kind of like a two-edged thing because do you mind if I go ahead and read the thing that I wrote because it's kind of related to
As
this?
long as it's not like an hour.
No, no, no. And this was written, I will say this was written when I was in a more difficult space. So
Mhm.
I still have some of these feelings. I can't remember if I said this already, but in 2021, in the spring, there was this point in time. I remember this space in time where I just felt like suicide was inevitable. I'm glad I was wrong. I'll just put it that way. I didn't write this during that time. I think it was after that. So my emotions that I'm expressing in this writing, some of them are still there, but maybe not as strongly. I'm just kind of clarifying. So it's called In Between. Sitting in the in between, life and death, waiting. Alone? Should I be? Can I tell you where I am? I'm scared of scaring you, hurting you, because I don't know where I'll be. Just honestly, in a year, a month, maybe even a day. Can I stay in the in between? No shame or blame if you can't be here, but if you can, when you can, be there with me next time I'm bench pressing, treading water, my mind bouncing frantically back and forth one to another. Seeing you in my memory, hearing you, helps me remember there's another way, a safe place to rest and breathe, to be in the in between.
Mm, thanks for sharing that. When did you write that?
My suicidality fluctuates so much. It fluctuates a lot. And so, yeah, it was just kind of written. It was written after a meeting, actually, in one of the groups I'm part of. And we are talking about, because sometimes it's really easy. Like if you see someone, if someone's struggling with suicidality, it's really easy to want to like push them towards life. And of course, you want them to stay, but you have to come alongside them first, really, and kind of hear why they want to take their own life, get some of that out, and really deal with what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yes.
I've used this word in my life, and I don't know when I started, called space between.
Yeah, I noticed that on your website. And so that's
Oh, okay.
one reason
Yeah.
I contacted you actually, because I was like, oh,
Okay, yeah,
that is
yeah.
really
And
cool.
I was like, "Oh, and that's similar idea, in between," right.
Yes.
My contention, even though it probably is unprovable, is that there are a lot more people living in the space between, which might be the same as saying living with suicide, though I'm not sure because that's actually a relatively new term for me, than we think. There's far more because people don't talk about it, and, that's not a, judgment on their choice not to talk about it. I understand by and large why
Mm.
most people choose not to talk about it. But what we do, and then I'll shut up and I want to hear more about your life, is what we do, I find, is we put it on them. Elizabeth doesn't want to talk about it. Elizabeth is feeling shame. Elizabeth, I shouldn't use your name. Whoever. My focus always goes to what's around them. Who's creating the space for them to talk, if anyone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in some of your work, which I want to hear more about, like it maybe there's a different thread or a different conversation happening. What I always hear is like, oh yeah, they don't want to talk about it because there's like such shame involved. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that's part of it, maybe, but like it's also probably no one around that they can trust to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a tricky thing. I think one thing I'm really grateful for, people in my church, I go to a community group and I can, if something in the sermon really relates to suicidality, like about Jesus's resurrection, that's huge for me.
Mm.
And I want to share, just talk about my faith with respect to other beliefs and everything. That's really been huge is to have that open space in community group to be able to talk about my suicidality and spirituality. And how do those two go together?
Wait, so are any of the groups in which you talk about suicidality connected to the church?
No, but actually, so what I'm talking about is actually my church group right now, part of that church group. And then I'm also part of several groups that are related to, well, trying to live through suicidality and help
Right.
people with things related to suicide.
Though the question I was curious about is, can you have a conversation with anyone from your church about this?
Yes.
I've asked this question a lot too with anybody who has a faith. What is your God, or how does your God feel about suicide?
So I didn't know Jesus when I was in college. And the way I dealt with it, the way I dealt with my suicidality was sometimes I would recite a Bible verse to myself, but I didn't really. it wasn't really powerful to me then. But mainly I just guilted myself out of it. I know it would hurt my friends and family, and yeah, and that's true. Knowing Jesus has just completely changed how I deal with my suicidality. Now, I really try to deal with it in a positive way. I just focus my mind on Jesus and what he did for me. I believe his life, his resurrected life, is inside me. And so that's eternal. And I can die physically. I know I will eventually. But
Yeah.
I believe like focusing on him just steadies me. And I believe he's giving me of his life. And so that's my most powerful thing that I do if I'm starting to feel suicidality. So it's really just really transformed a
All
lot
right.
how I deal with it.
When did you find him?
August or September of 2017. I was helping out some with my family, and I just remember I came back home. I lay awake at night because I was feeling such joy. And I'm like,
Really?
at first, what is going on? What's going on here? And I knew it was like things felt different, but it was like exactly where they should be. And I was just focused on Jesus and how he died for me. And just everything started changing since then. I started being actually humble in community group, and you should have seen the look on my husband's face the first time I did that because, boy, he was shocked. I would not have done that before.
You said the shock came from you being humble.
Yes,
What were you before?
proud, you know, arrogant, I guess I could say,
Well,
in
what,
ways.
how would that look or sound different?
So I remember I was talking about some of my issues with anger and just kind of holding on to it. And I shared about that in community group. And the look on my husband's face was just like, because I would never have been that open. I wouldn't have before. And that was just the start, and things started changing. And then when I started going through suicidality again, it was like, wait a minute, this can change too. It was after that that I took steps towards it again in 2020, and that was hard too, like, "Oh boy, here I am."
The thing that is scary is like, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're in the clear.
Oh,
And
yeah,
when you
definitely.
dip back into it, once you've tried all the stuff, that could be like harder almost in a different way. So I want to make sure I have the timeline. I know we're kind of being loose about your life and we're not going into all the details. That's probably by design, but you grew up in the East
Mhm.
Coast?
Eastern U.S., yes.
Eastern US, yeah. Oh, okay, fine. But thank you for the correction. Uh, the struggle really started in college.
I took sips multiple times, and then there was one time I was pretty intent on doing it. So I started taking a step towards really doing it, and then my foot slipped. And that's when, like, I stopped. I didn't know it then, but I do believe God whacked my foot. Like,
Uh, well, I always do ask, or I often ask, like, what stops you?
yeah, yeah, the slip. It doesn't make sense logically if you think about what I was thinking of doing. I
Well,
didn't
it
wanna
doesn't make
fall.
as much sense because we've chosen not to talk about method, but I'm using my
Yes.
imagination and I'm a visual guy, so but that's cool. You think it then, even though you didn't have faith then, it took you some time. It would take you some years to find Jesus. You think that was Jesus?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think he whacked my foot. And then I
Do you
slipped.
think when you found him in 2017, he was like a little bit like, took you a little longer than I expected? Like I was there for you.
And I didn't even see it for so many years.
From what I hear, he's a pretty forgiving guy, so I'm sure you're okay.
Incredibly. Yes,
Um,
incredibly.
so there's probably a few years that go by. You had a trauma and you dealt with that, and you had some stuff that you were dealing with. Is there any connection to the traumatic event in 2014 and finding God in 2017? Do you think?
I think basically I was blaming myself for the
Mm.
way my body and mind responded to the
Oh,
trauma. I was blaming myself for everything, and I was kind of miserable. I
mhm.
just felt like I was a failure. And then God came to me and was like, "Hey, I love you." And
As somebody who's not a believer, but I respect your faith, of course. I'm in the agnostic camp for sure. How did you know?
so there have been multiple things. It was, I knew it in my heart. I knew that things were changing
Yeah.
inside me. Things were changing in the way I was thinking. I just knew, and I could
Huh.
see it like with people around me too. I started growing. I felt the love. I felt God's love in people around me. So I've started changing, and I'm not saying I've reached a perfect state because I absolutely have not. Yeah, it's just things change. Things change in my heart and my mind, and started little by little, and I'm just really grateful because Yeah, I believe he's been with me and just held me all this time.
So someone
And
like me, I'm a little kind of an acerbic New Yorker, right? We would hear this, and I think I've toned down a little bit over the years, particularly doing this work. But then there's parts of me that would have been like, all right, so in 2017, this happens. If God loves you so much, here's the classic challenge, right? If God
mhm.
loves you so much, why would He have put you through what happened in 2020, what sounded like bled into 2021?
So I believe that God uses tough things and he uses them to grow us. And that's been tough. I do not believe Christians have it easier. I don't think we should have it easier because we're not protected from life. We're held through it and we're guided and supported through it, but it doesn't mean we don't go through the same stuff as everybody else. And I think that's an important thing.
It makes sense what you said. I envy, and I use that term accurately. I envy people who have legitimate faith. I just do. I envy them. I wish I would like them. I guess embedded in there a little bit is like your life is better or easier. And I don't mean that, but to have that sort of feeling or what I imagine what must that feel like is something like I'd like that. This is not me inviting you in to try to convert me.
Yeah, it's a difference. I have known a big difference in between that, and also, the times when I after God brought me to Him and before, there's been a big difference in between those times, and yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and also with respect to your beliefs as well.
Or my lack, I think it's more my lack thereof, but sure.
Yes,
A
yes.
non-belief is a belief. Do you think without Jesus, you are alive?
Spiritually, no, definitely not.
Not really what I meant, but I wanna hear the full answer.
Physically, and I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to make it sound like people can't get through it without Jesus, although I really do believe that God helps people through it, even though they don't believe it. Well, like he did with me, I believe.
Sure, sure.
I wasn't following him then, and he still whacked my foot away. And I don't know that I would be without Jesus. Like if God hadn't saved me at that point, I don't know that I would be. But I also do believe that, it's very possible he would have helped me through it still too.
I know you believe strongly enough that somehow he would have shown up, but my question was, he's just not there.
If he didn't,
Yeah,
probably not.
these days, so we're in 2026 now, and it's moving very fast, and it does literally feel like time is starting to move faster than it used to, and I think that might be aging,
Yes.
but it's freaking me out. How often do you think about it, if at all?
I do think about it still, definitely. I wouldn't say it's every single day. It definitely used to be for a while.
As I think when people say I think about it, that can mean a lot of things.
Mhm.
For some people, that's just sort of the idea of it out there somewhere. Maybe they're studying it. That counts as thinking about it. But you know what I
It's
mean by
true.
the question is really. So I'm actually a little surprised. I thought, and I don't know why, I thought, given what you shared, that the answer would have been I think about it once in a while. There's no reason that I had that. I just did not expect you to say it's not every day, which means it's still pretty often.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I'll share that openly. It is pretty often, pretty
Right.
frequent, and that's okay.
And
Yeah.
you have places to talk about it, and one of them is a group you run.
Yeah. Well, I'm part of. I'm not like the leader of any of the groups, but I'm part of them. One of them is Pause, People Addressing and Understanding Suicidal Intensity.
Quick PSA, public shut announcement. After we spoke, Elizabeth let me know that in fact, pause is people addressing and understanding suicide experiences. Just to clarify, back to the conversation.
And the other one is Living Beyond Suicide. I'm also a board member of the Suicide Prevention Alliance.
So you are staying busy, and I know that Alliance has an annual conference, so that might be something that people want to learn more about. There's a few places where you're involved, and you can talk about it.
Yes. We welcome people from everywhere.
And most of these meetings are online.
Yes.
That's cool that you're involved in that. And
Thank
then it
you.
helps. It helps you. It helps others. You said earlier that you had I don't know what the word is. I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but you read a story or heard something from somebody who covered from an attempt, I believe, and it gave you some hope because they were doing better. And then
Mhm.
I asked you, are you doing better? And you said yes, which is really interesting. So the answer can coexist with yes, I'm doing better, and I often think about it.
Yeah. Those 2 kinda go together. I would say maybe with the start of COVID, or maybe it might have been a little before that I started thinking about it basically every day. It can be very different, though. I think that's one thing that people also don't tend to talk about. is that there's different intensities of it. So
Yeah.
most of the time when I feel it, it's kind of like, okay, got it, can handle it, it's
Mhm.
manageable. I actually, what I did is I created a scale for myself and my friends and my therapist. It's a scale of like how strong the feelings are and how well I think I can handle them without acting. Basically, it's from 1 to 10, where 10 is seeking out the means. 4 used to be my daily normal, but it's not anymore. It's not as strong. 6 is where I'm supposed to let my therapist know. 8 is like, yeah, definitely need to reach out for help at that point. Although sometimes actually what I do is if it's really strong, sometimes it's a little easier to just kind of postpone making plans. And if I'll be like, "Okay, I really wanna think about this," sometimes it's kind of the waiting game because I know I'll feel better the next day. So,
Right, right. You've learned that.
yeah. Yeah.
Everything we've talked about, not that we're done. Does your husband know all of this?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are some people who are married, they were there, this part of the conversation, they don't always go and share everything. How long have you guys been together?
We got married in 2010.
Okay, so you've made it a little while.
Yep. Mhm. 15
Congratulations.
years as of last year. Thank you.
15 years, 16 years, one human being cohabitating, I assume. Amazing how that two people can do that. Any two people. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and it's a
Yeah.
challenge living through, suicidality with that too, and it's
Right.
tricky figuring out boundaries and stuff like that, but, yeah, I'm really grateful for my husband, especially for one time I called him when I was in a really tricky place, feeling very strong suicidality. I think he was kinda surprised at first, actually, but I told him what was going on, and he said, "God is holding you right now."
You didn't meet through the church.
We actually did through a different church, but I didn't know Jesus at that point. So,
That's what I was thinking because it was too long. It was way before then. Yeah.
yes, he was pretty surprised too.
When do you first start talking about this stuff with someone? It's probably not the first date. I'm sorry.
We talked about this pretty early on. I thought I could earn God's favor beforehand, and so I thought I did believe in Jesus, but I didn't because I wasn't really trusting in him. That's really what changed, and so he thought I was a Christian, but I thought I was a Christian, but I wasn't. And then
Um,
in 2017, like, whoa, everything. It's probably one of the biggest surprises of his life.
okay, so a few other things that I'm curious about. I never asked you how you even know about me or this podcast.
So I found out through some friends, and I saw the in between thing that you had, and that really reminded me of my own writing. And I was like, that's really cool that two people going through suicidality had thought of something that similar.
Sure.
Like you were saying, how many, many more people lived through it than we know about. And I
Yeah.
think that's completely true. And I think studies have started to show like a third to 50%, like seriously, will
Yeah.
experience it in their lifetime. So it's like, why can't we just talk about this and kind of coach one another on how we deal with it, and that would help people live through it, you know?
What do you think the answer is to that question?
I think our culture has a very strong fear of death, and
Yeah.
anything associated with death is kind of like, ugh, and people don't wanna think that they might get there themselves. There's also that statistic associated with mental illness, which has been, disproved that, like, 90% of people who die by suicide had a mental illness, but actually it turns out it's a lot less or
Yeah.
significantly, like, maybe
Significant.
50 to 60. Yeah, and a lot of people just do think about this, and it's kind of a just a human thing. You
Yep.
know, I don't think we have to classify it as something disordered. And now I don't like it. I wish I didn't feel this way. You know, it's just kind of part of being human for a lot of human beings, not everyone.
Not everybody, of course. Given some of the stuff you're involved in, I'm gonna make an assumption, you'll tell me if I'm wrong, that there's not a small number of people who know that Elizabeth has come close to ending her life.
Oh yeah, I share it. Yeah, I'm very open in all the groups I'm part of,
Yeah.
and they know, and I'm really grateful for them too, because incredible
And
support.
connected to that is how many people do you have to talk to about it? It's like, I kinda think those 2 go hand in hand given what you just said.
Yes, yeah, they do.
Do you think you'll always be living with suicide?
You mean having suicidal feelings?
I'm gonna let you define that however you want, so yeah, or answer that however you want. Yeah, so sure.
I would answer that like I hope not,
Mhm.
because I would love for it to. I'd like to not feel that. And I'm really grateful for how it's better than it used to be, somewhat in frequency and definitely in intensity, of suicidal feelings. I don't know, to
Yeah.
be honest, I just don't know, but I do believe I can live a purposeful life with it.
The pink and purple pill question. If you've heard the podcast in the last few years, you've heard that question asked.
Yep.
More and more, and I think this is dangerous. I assume I know the person's answer. Sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes I'll tell them, and sometimes I won't. And all it
Mhm.
is simply is that if I give Elizabeth this pill and she swallows it, she'll gently go to sleep. She doesn't wake up. There's no pain, and nobody knows it's a suicide. Although some people say, oh, "No, I actually want them to know." So it's like, all right, you can play around with that if you want to. And what would you do with it?
No, thank you, is my answer. I will be honest, a part of me would want it.
Yeah,
I'll be honest about that.
I
Um,
think you've been honest this whole time. Am I wrong?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. But yeah, you would want
Part of me would want it, but it's just been pushing me around for so long, and the answer is no. And I actually have kind of a story related to something similar to that, if it's okay if
yeah.
I share that. Not to specifically a pink and purple pill, I have to say. So there was this one time that I heard somebody to whom I could really relate share. So I went up to them afterwards and I thanked them for sharing. And I told them, some of the stuff we had in common. He said to me, "Keep fighting." I looked down and he knew I hadn't decided. And I don't know how I think God like put on his mind, like he knew. And I'm like, how? And so he held out his pinky. He asked me, "Pinky swear?" And gave me a big smile. So I looked up and it was just one of those moments where you catch your breath because it's like, wow, this is just like a life defining moment here.
Some people could say coincidence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I realized that and respect that too. Yes. It was incredible. And so I pinky swore him. And so I just realized at that point, it's time to say no. And so
Right.
that's my answer. I'd like to say real quick too that I do not think you can push someone to that point
Yeah.
because I think it has to be something that comes from within. So like no suicide contracts. Yeah. Signed one of those. My college time did
You
that.
do it because you have to do
But
it.
it's
Yeah.
kind of yeah. Now they gave me a safety plan too, and actually that was kinda helpful to have that
Yeah.
stuff filled out. And then I signed one with some friends, and although actually that was a little different because technically what they asked me is not to harm myself without talking to them.
That's different.
And yeah, yeah,
Sometimes those contracts, especially if it's from an institution, that's more is just as much for them as it is for you.
probably more so, just to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
honest. Doesn't tend to help people so much. Although I know one person, something like that did help
Yeah, there's always
overall.
going to be
Yeah.
an exception to almost all of this, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's also interesting that you said he did a pinky swear, and it's a pink
Pinky swear.
and it's a pink and purple pill.
That is funny. I hadn't even thought of that.
So we
Yes.
used the word pink twice, so that can't be coincidence.
Yep.
No way. Are there these tend to come up organically, but are there any like really big myths or misconceptions about kind of any of this stuff that you want to dispel?
So I think one of them would be kind of as we talked about before, the number of people who feel suicidal thoughts and feelings is a lot bigger
Uh-huh.
than we think. Also, the one about mental illness, definitely that it's not necessarily related to a mental illness. I think it's just a human thing. I mean, people have been thinking about it for almost as long as there have been people, basically.
You can't prove that, but I think so.
Yeah, so it's kinda like, we learn how to drive through rain and snow and sleet, and we don't learn how to deal with this. Why? Why can't we just talk about this and grow together, I think.
So the myth behind that is
I guess the myth would be that the number is very small
yeah.
of people who or the myth another myth could be that everyone who feels suicidal intensity acts on it. Another myth
Mm.
could be that everyone who attempts suicide will eventually die by it because that's actually very much not true
Now that's
either.
very much factually not true.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
some of the stuff is subjective, but that's objectively true.
Yeah. So there's a lot of living through that goes on just
Right.
around us.
How long have you been involved in these groups? Specifically where you could talk openly about suicide?
December of 2021.
Is there one or two things, because it kind of connects to all the stuff and myths or whatever else. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but like, is there one thing with all of these conversations you've had, a little different in nature than mine, maybe, but like you've had a lot of them, or you've heard a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's probably you've heard the same person over 3 years. Sometimes you see the person once. I'm sure it
Mhm.
runs, it's the whole spectrum. It's a kind of a big question, but it's like, is there something you've learned? Is there something that's been especially surprising? I'm sure we could do a long list, but what comes to mind is the big stuff.
One, how hard it is to lose somebody to it. I haven't lost somebody, but I had no idea. And then I started hearing lost survivor stories because there are lost survivors involved too. That's when I tend to get a little teary-eyed over here. And that, like, oh my word, my family, my friends could have been going through that. And it's
Right.
worth every ounce of effort and energy and tons more that I put into fighting it because, ouch, I had no idea, no clue whatsoever.
I wasn't expecting that.
But also the groups, like, we welcome different, people with different experiences, and I actually think that's really good to have people together for the reason that I just shared. Like, I think it's good, not in a shaming, blaming way, to know, "Hey, this would hurt."
This is where you need really solid facilitator.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. It does have to be done very carefully, and, I mean, I've never felt any, lost survivors who are, like, getting at me. In fact,
Right.
they tend to, like, reach out and, like, "Hey, would you like support? I'm here." It's incredible how they do that.
Yeah. So no hospital stays for you for mental health.
No.
Just a couple like random things that I'm just personally curious about for your adult life. Like, and I don't want to make any assumptions that you had a job, but I like, do you have any kids? What was your job? Like life stuff.
I'm a teacher and teacher's aide.
Okay.
At a small group and not at a public school, but a small independent group. Like I try to teach some emotional stuff, even like without using the word suicide generally. I just try to teach like emotional coping with emotions, dealing with them.
And these are probably with children, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
you know who really needs those lessons though, right? It's the
Um,
grown-ups.
the grown-ups, yes. That's true too.
We teach the stuff and then we stop. So just a thought I've had lately, like, yeah, like at 5 years old, like half of what's going on is just how to get along.
Yeah.
And then you
Uh,
start getting into the subjects.
The kids I teach, they're actually some of them are younger, but some of them are just at the age where they're starting to think about deep stuff. Their minds are starting to open, and so I think it's a crucial time for them. A lot of times when I teach something emotionally related, I'll be learning the same thing. God wants me to teach this stuff like, "Okay, you need to learn this, so here you go."
Yeah, absolutely. So, but your memoir title, just to be clear, Reflections of a Suicidal Empath. There's no God is not in there. In between is not in there. Maybe that might show up in the text if the book is ever written. Subtitle, and it's yours. So I'm glad you found something you like. If you were me, would you ask a question that I don't ask? Is there something you want to talk about that I don't bring up?
Well, you had us, in the list of questions, you had what helps, and I think we talked some about that.
We did, right. So I don't always necessarily ask it again, but please add to it.
First of all, focusing my mind on Jesus and talking with someone generally who's okay with that. There are other things that can help too. Like, I like to exercise. It really helps me to get out some of the kind of like the steam that builds up inside me.
Totally. Yes.
So I like to walk and jog. Sometimes outside, sometimes in the weather, sometimes in bad weather. Cold temperatures are also helpful. So I like the winter better
Mhm.
than the summer.
You do realize, Elizabeth, that when you say Eastern U.S., you probably just people now know you don't live in Florida.
That's okay.
But there's still a huge number of acres that you're not finding there. Just let's trust me on that one. You're safely tucked away where you are. Those are all cool things, healthy things. Yeah, yeah. And I think people like know them often. It's just that it's hard to do them sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one thing too, like for me, is trying to kind of catch it early on because
Yeah.
later on it's going to be a lot harder to deal with. It's much easier to try to catch the thing early on when it's kind of like if it's building up. And I
Yeah.
actually use the analogy of a bull, like a male cow. That's
Okay.
my trauma response. And it thinks that suicide is the ultimate self protective act, basically. So I'll refer to it like, I'll say to my friends sometimes, if I've been doing something that I was concerned might be a problem, but it's not, I'll say, "The bull is sleeping in his pen."
Just to be clear, bull, Bull. What does the bull is sleeping in its pen mean?
It basically means that it wasn't a trauma. Whatever I did was not a trauma problem for me. Things are okay at
Okay.
this point. Sometimes it'll be kind of like sniffing over my shoulder, and I'm speaking metaphorically, totally,
I
but
I love metaphors.
I think it's a good way of describing things because it's hard to. I think in
Yeah.
English, especially, it's a tricky
Yeah.
thing. So it's been really helpful to me. And sometimes the bowl is like jumping and tossing around. I'm somehow like attached to the thing, trying to kind of keep myself from getting injured. And that's when I'd be pretty high up on my scale.
You said something interesting though, that sometimes I think you said the trauma response, if I'm understanding, is the thing that
Yeah.
lets you believe that suicide's the ultimate suicide is a protective factor, you said?
Protective act,
Ah,
basically.
some people will tell me it's not for them. It feels like it's just like something they need to have as a possibility. It makes them feel like I just knowing it's there is helpful.
Yeah.
It- It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's not like that for me. No, it's like an intruder. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want you here, go away. And then the other thing too is that sometimes if I'm trying to interact with other people while the bull is going bananas inside of me, for example, someone in the china shop trying
Yes.
to kind of manage this bull, and meanwhile a customer calls and they're maybe getting a little crabby because they're not getting my full attention. Like, I'm sorry, but I've got this bull like
Right.
driving me bananas inside me. It's like trying to focus on like, ah, I can't do that.
And it's a china shop.
Yes.
To add some more pressure to you in that moment.
Yes.
Well, it was fun. I appreciate talking with you. What else, if anything, do you want to share with me? And then, there will be other people that hear this at some point.
Let's see. I'd like to say a few things to some of my friends and family.
Sure. So that means presumably they're going to hear it. Are you going to listen to this episode? I wonder.
I'm going to listen, but it might take a bit because sometimes when I listen to myself, it's like, ah.
No, but I think this is really cool. And it's something that people don't do very often. What you're doing right now is like you're specifically speaking to people, like specific people in your life. I like it. I love it.
Thank you. First, just to God, to Jesus for dying for me, that crazy love, just for holding me through everything. My husband, I'm grateful to him just for being there for me. For the time he said God was holding me, and another time when he knew I needed someone around, even though I was kind of trying to get him away. But
Mm,
no, he knew. My counselor, who I can talk with openly,
mm.
which is really incredible because sometimes that's not the case. And my family and friends, just for listening, for praying with me and for me, and for showing me them special in different ways. I seriously, owe them a lot. And fellow bench pressers, other people who are living through suicidal intensity, and my other colleagues in the groups, you help me to know that it's possible to live through this stuff, to get through it. So thank you. And I just know we're going to keep on changing the world and shaking it up.
Nicely said. I've never heard this term in this context, bench pressers.
That's what I had from the thing I wrote, bench
Uh-huh.
pressing.
Is this just
Yeah.
about weight? This is about weight.
Yes, because it feels like I'm carrying weight and at the
Yeah.
same time trying to keep myself afloat. And it's like those two things together, like, how do I do this at the same time? That's to represent really strong suicidal intensity. Most of the time when I feel it, it's more like it's kind of normal to me. It's just part of my life. But when it gets more intense, then it's more challenging. Yeah.
Thanks for talking.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was a good chat. I really appreciate it. I hope the rest of your day is nice. I hope our paths cross again soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Elizabeth.
Take care. Bye.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to Elizabeth in the Eastern United States. Thanks, Elizabeth. If you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, I'd love to talk with you. Please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. Again, want to thank Matt for his financial contribution. Tax deductible, of course. Appreciate it, Matt. And that's all for this week's episode. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.